Welcome to Patent Pending. I'm your host, Gabriel Moncau. Today I'm joined at the top right by Perri, video game enthusiast, retired broadcast talent, world-renowned Shovel Knight Discord owner. At the bottom left, Spencer Waldshan, longtime TSA member, audio bag guy, apparently, and masochistic enough to come on this show twice. And Brence Platner at the bottom right, longtime film student planning on going to college for film, but most known for pulling rabbits out of hats. How you guys doing today?
All good.
Fantastic. Good.
Glad to have you guys joining me. So we'll just jump right into it then. I think we have to start at the beginning, right? Like, how did you guys get into film? How were the programs back then? Who was around? And what kind of got you started? And anybody can just jump in.
I think all three of us are going to have very different experiences with that question because of our different times coming to Pinecrest. I can start if anyone... Okay,
sure,
so I started at film because I came to Pinecrest in first grade, right? And so my mom was a second grade teacher in the same year. And so her second grade teacher co-worker was Mrs. Burgess. And so then, because they were working in the same grade at Pinecrest Boca, they became good friends. And then we wound up hanging out with the Burgesses quite a bit. And then eventually when I got to fifth grade, before I got to fifth grade, Mr. Burgess was always telling me, you got to do the TV stuff, you got to do the news stuff, the film stuff. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll do the morning show in fifth grade PCNN, which entailed of me doing various different jobs. Because it was all run by lower schoolers, so you can imagine that it was kind of hilarious. But it was also every day in the morning, so we got pretty good at what we had to do. And so like I would go behind the camera and operate the camera. I think I anchored once, and it was a complete disaster. And I mostly did the audio mixer. It's like a little, you know what an audio mixer is. And then the TriCaster, which was basically the camera switcher to switch like the different pre-made graphics and all that stuff. So then after that, I went into PCNN in sixth grade. I did that throughout all of middle school. In eighth grade, I kind of led the team with Zach Goldstein and Gabby Coriati. Then in ninth grade, I joined PCTV because that's like the extension. And I did not like PCTV. I liked PCNN a lot, but I did not like PCTV. So I did that for like 2 years and I was like, I wasn't into it. So then Spencer told me about the film stuff and how great film studies was and film production. I was like, okay, I'll do that. So junior year, I started film production, and I had experience with film before that, but that was my first like formal training in the realm of cinema. Other than like the eighth grade wheel class that all the Boca kids did, that was a trip. And so yeah, then I did film production junior year, film studies senior year, and then now it's all gone.
How different is your experience, Brence?
I think the last two parts are relatively similar to Pete's, but the first part, not so much. I mean, I was at Pinecrest since pre-K, but I never really got into PCTV or PCNN or anything. I was always really big into Legos and building Legos, and I still build stuff. All the nonsense behind me is Lego stuff. But around like middle school, I got really into making like stop motion movies with the Legos and kind of bringing them to life and taking just tons of little pictures and putting them together. And by like seventh grade, I went to this camp in Atlanta. I forget what the university was called. I think Kaiser University or something. And it was a stop motion camp. And that was where I made like my first stop motion thing that was like a minute long. And that was really fun. And so then that summer, for like 4 weeks in the North Georgia mountains, we have like a small place up there. I made a claymation movie, Clay the Movie, that's like 6 minutes long. And that was really fun. And it was about a little claymation figure going into like the human world and doing all kinds of ridiculous shenanigans, and then going back and using a computer and thumbtacks and all kinds of human stuff. So that was really fun. And then during my first 2 years of high school, I I made a few quick stop motion stuff, but nothing that was really intense. And then I met Ryan Felberbaum at Pinecrest, and he introduced me to Miss A, and she talked about the film production class for junior year, and that it was going to be a new thing, and that I should do that, and then film studies senior year. So I joined the film production class junior year, and that was when I got to work with Mr. Vosge, Mr. Burgess, and all these guys, and kind of learn the lay of the land. And then I went to STN that year, Student Television Network, right? For the first time. And I kind of nestled out a little hole for myself as like the audio guy for every single thing that our group did together, with like their $20,000 audio bag, which like I guess that Pinecrest had, but not many people wanted to take it on. So whenever we would from then on out travel out to do a film project, I would always just use that audio bag. But I loved lighting and being behind the camera and stuff. But I mean, my number one thing with filmmaking is storytelling and piecing everything together. And then senior year, same thing. I took film studies and started to kind of understand how films are kind of pieces of art, and understanding kind of subtext and intentionality in films.
Yeah, so also shout out to Ryan Felberbaum, absolute legend. But I started, so in middle school, I'd say at about like 7th grade, because I came to Pinecrest in 6th grade. In 7th grade, I joined PCNN, and I tried it for a little bit, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I could get behind this, because I think my I know Pete was in my class, but our math teacher was Mr. Svensson, and he was also the PCNN guy. So I was already familiar with it. So I tried it out for a year. I was like, all right, PCNN, like it was fine. I didn't really get like a super strong attachment to it. I knew Pete was in it, and because he was already doing it for a while. He was kind of he was at the helm. And I remember when I was setting up, I noticed they had like the PCNN film, as like a separate thing that was only available to 8th graders. It was like it was like the holy grail. It was special. So when 8th grade came around, I was like, what, PCNN, it's kind of boring, and they got a bunch of people. I'm sure they're fine. I'm gonna try the film. I'm gonna try the PCNN film. And I joined it, and there were a couple other like goons there, like there was Jimmy, Alan Yang, R.I.P. He was there. It was quite an interesting group, and Mr. Svensson was the main guy, and it was very unlike PCNN. I mean, I like PCNN was pretty freeform, but like PCNN film was like very freeform. Like Mr. Svensson was basically just like, this is like how a film is supposed to be. What do you guys want to do? And we just kind of got to do whatever we wanted, and it was cool because the films would get shown. At least some of them would get shown during the actual like PCNN broadcast, which is pretty cool. And then in high school, I wanted to continue doing the film thing, and so I signed up for the class. I met Miss A, and it was interesting because I think me and Jimmy did the film class route a little differently than a couple other students, because we took both of the film studies classes first. We took it freshman and sophomore year, and then in 11th grade we did film production with Mr. Vosge and Mr. Burgess. And then for senior year, I guess like optionally, like you could do like another continuation of the film studies program. I didn't have enough time in my schedule to actually fit it in senior year, but I still I retained a lot of my knowledge from film, and hopefully I can continue to do some of that in college. But yeah.
So you guys seem like you had some different backgrounds before getting into film or what you've done since even. But when you first got involved in these things, what were you expecting and how different was it when you got involved? Like, do you feel like there was a certain thing that you came in thinking you were going to be doing and it turned out to be different than that, or was it exactly what you thought it was?
Um, so for my experience with all of that was basically when you were a lower schooler at Pinecrest, PCNN was like the coolest thing that there was. Like if you were on PCNN, because they did it every week, high quality at the end of the day, like 30-40 minutes of content. And even if you look back and the quality wasn't amazing in hindsight, it was legendary for lower schoolers because it's like, wow, this is our school, but it looks like a professional TV broadcast. And I think that the value of that cannot be overstated. And so because of how insanely good we all thought it was and how much we watched it, we when you could be involved in the 5th grade morning broadcast thing that they started pretty recently after I was in like 3rd or 4th grade, it was a big deal because even though it wasn't real PCNN, it was still the same graphics, the same studio, all that stuff. So we all looked up to the middle school PCNN. If you were on PCNN, if the PCNN guy came to your classroom and interviewed you, it was like you were going to be a celebrity. Like you were going to be on the TV at the end of the week, and everyone was going to scream when they saw you on the TV. Ah, Brence is on TV. Like Brence wasn't there, but So I got there, and I don't really remember what I expected it to be because I didn't know anything about what they did. But the 5th grade experience was a pretty accurate representation of what it became in middle school, at least during the broadcasts, because we didn't produce the content other than anchoring and like the live part. We didn't make the pieces. That was the middle schoolers mostly, because we were in 5th grade. We didn't have like a class for it. We went before school. It was all optional. So yeah, it was a pretty similar experience, which tied pretty seamlessly into the middle school experience. So my expectations were pretty consistent throughout middle school. And going to high school, I expected it to continue to be the same way, where like even in middle school, your contemporary grade will always crap on whatever the grade is making, no matter if it's better or worse than what came before. Because there's just you get haters. People of your own age always are more disillusioned with how things work than people who are younger, and they look up and they idealize things. But there was still a level of respect that was with PCNN that I feel completely disappeared almost from the grade once we got to high school, because PCTV was just a lot less of a thing. It was much less of a part of everyone's life because it was only 5 minutes at a weird time when no one really wanted to watch it. And so the way that it worked, it couldn't really be a big deal for the viewers, but it could still be a big deal for the people who were involved. But in the class, unless you were in the class that worked on the broadcasts, anything you made was pretty much irrelevant. Like nothing was put on the broadcasts, which was part of why, like what Spencer was talking about, the PCNN film in 8th grade, that was so cool to them, partially because all of their broadcasts, all of their films would be aired. We had a film block at the end of the show, and that part people look forward to because they're like, this is the funny stuff now, like because they always made funny stuff. So everyone was excited for that. That kind of thing was completely lost I guess by the high school schedule. But my counter argument to the high school schedule dilemma would be, you know, we have random 30, 40, 50 an hour long blocks for random guest speakers like every other day that no one really wants to go to. Why can't we do that kind of thing for PCTV every week? Which we did for certain days, like for homecoming, everyone cares about PCTV because it's actually long and there's actually things people want to watch. And so the fact that like no one really cared about the broadcasts, but the broadcasts were all there were to do that was even close to meaningful, meant that like a PCTV class basically just evolved into me and some friends screwing around and making whatever the heck we wanted to make. And so that led to things like this infamous video of Jason pretending to be Snivy Kid 2005, I think it is, where he's just a meme. Led to stuff like that, and I wanted more. So then the film production class was a thing in junior year, and I had pretty consistent expectations for what I thought that would be. I was like, this is where we're going to learn film and how to make film, and that's what we did, and I enjoyed it a lot. And then film studies, same thing. I was like, we're going to watch movies, and then we're going to talk about them and the choices that are made and the making behind them, and that's what we did, and I loved it. So it was a pretty positive experience overall for me, at least.
Yeah, I can go into you're curious about the perception before versus after, right, Gabe? Yeah. So I think that I agree with Pete that in middle school, like for Fort Lauderdale campus as well, PCTV or I forget what it was called in middle school, but everyone went crazy about it on like the Tuesday that it aired for us. Like it aired right after lunch, or like when we were all playing basketball or doing some kind of recess activity. So we'd all come in like sweaty, and then we'd come to our after lunch period class and we'd watch PCTV in there, and it'd be awesome because we'd just see people we knew. Could be us on there. It was like the idea of little celebrities, like Pete said. And then the extent of me doing that in lower school is just me doing like the Pledge of Allegiance on PCAM one time. But that's in front of the camera. But in high school, yeah, I think that the value of, in the students' eyes, of what PCTV was definitely went down, because I think it also was like a lot of people were just like, hey, I can join this class and get my art credit from it, and then also not have to display it to anyone. And I think we underestimate how much our peers motivate us, and the fact that like if it's being shown to our peers, we're motivated to make something much better.
Sure.
I think that's like when you know that it's going to be shown to people, then you're like, oh, I have to actually make a good product. But in terms of my perception, I didn't know anything about the film program. I mean, Ryan Felberbaum was all I knew, and he was a really cool guy. And he seemed very technically knowledgeable about everything. So I was like, I want to be able to get that, because I felt like I had developed kind of my own creative thought process and story creation process, but I hadn't really I understood the way of actually making a film. I was just shooting stuff on my iPhone, and like stop motion, like the stop motion app from the Lego company, which just puts the pictures together for you, which is kind of nonsensical thinking back to it, but it's what every kid does. And finally, when I got to high school, I think that film production class was like one of the coolest classes ever, because going into it, like I'd never had teachers like Mr. Burgess, and like it was Mr. Burgess and Mr. Vosge teaching together. Sometimes it was one of them, sometimes it was the other, and they treated us like equals. And they also could very obviously, you could see that they had experience in the film production industry, because like they were able to talk about their own experiences on different sets and give us insights into things. So you felt like you were really gaining knowledge that you were going to use, because then the structure of the class was just to have one day of learning. For example, like the exposure triangle, stuff like that. and looking at the three different aspects. We'd learn that on one day with the Sony A7S, and then the next day we'd go out and shoot and try to get good photos and mess with our exposure in the field, but just around campus. And that was really cool to kind of learn. And I think that film production class is what inspired me. I was like, I actually want to do film in college and possibly in the future as well. And that's why it's like that kind of inspired me to pursue it. And now I'm going to actually be able to do it in college, which is really neat.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess if we're talking about like expectations, when I joined the PCNN film thing in eighth grade, I didn't really have any expectations other than that. Um, like in years prior, I'd seen some of the films on the PCNN that were aired, um, and I was like, oh, like that's like they were funny, and they were like, oh, that's cool, like doing a film instead of just like I don't know, like doing a story or just like some like random like interview. It just seemed like more interesting to me. So I wanted I signed up to join just because I was like, you know, I think this will be cool, and I know a little bit about the PCM and stuff. I mean, I know Mr. Svensson, so why not? Uh, and eighth grade was good as like an introduction to like how film works and stuff. But in high school, I think my expectations kind of changed, um, especially like from like 10th grade onwards, because like going into film, I felt very comfortable because after doing it for 2 years and then 3 years, you kind of develop like knowledge of like how things go, and like what people do. It's like you have a squad basically, and you have people that and can trust to do things. So it just became very comfortable doing things, and you keep coming back. You keep wanting more, and it's cool. You get creative stuff that you get to practice. You get technical stuff like whether it be with cameras or editing or audio, whatever. But it's all I don't know. It's very cool. It's like once you dive in, you just want to keep going. That's basically it.
Can I piggyback off something that Spencer said too? That I totally agree that like you kind of get acclimated to your people, and like you as you work together. Like I think me and Pete and like a few other people who were in our film production class, like who went to STN and then went to the All American High School Film Festival after, which was I guess this school year, but 2019 October. Like we started to kind of develop a rhythm of doing things. But then also it was interesting as like working on sets, like you start like for me, I started to realize like pretty quickly kind of like an intuition or subconsciously that like I didn't really think I had, but like I did, where even though I wasn't directing, like there were a lot of other people who would direct because they had 2 or 3 years of film studies experience. They knew how to make a script and direct. I would see them doing things that I wouldn't have thought to do, but also I'd see them doing things where like instinctively I would have thought to myself I would have done that totally differently. And so I kind of think it helped me develop instincts and kind of helped me realize like how I would do things in a different way. And I think you can't really do that unless you have other people working in front of you to show you what it would look like.
I think that's definitely something that's interesting. The people that come through these programs, I think, are very different than the people that come through necessarily other programs. And the programs themselves are structured differently because they are classes, but there are also opportunities to do things outside. So how would you say that kind of has shaped and changed in your experience in the time that you've been here? Do you think that there has been a lot more people getting interested in these things? Do you think that there was a certain point where film or broadcast, since those are kind of intertwined in your stories, do you think that they sort of hit mainstream at some point and became more popular in the time that you were here? Because it seems like in middle school especially, I have to agree with Pete that in my experience, it certainly seemed like PCNN was a lot more prevalent than either PCTV or the film programs are in high school. But do you think that they have grown, or how have they changed over time?
I think the biggest thing, at least with film, is the film production class. I think that like the film production class, like being a thing, um, I think has gotten a lot of people interested in film because all that was there beforehand was film studies, and film studies is it's not a technical class. It's really just about like film analysis and like really like what makes a good film, and like how to write a script, and like how to like write a story basically. That's
Yeah, we
film
only had
studies,
2 freshmen join
and
that.
that's
It was
really
not popular.
that like it. Film studies. I think is a really good class if you already have technical knowledge. So a lot of the kids that entered film studies, um, I guess like less so for our grade, more like the grade above that was in it, but um, like me and a couple others, a lot of the kids that entered film studies already did stuff like PCNN in middle school, or even like the PCNN film stuff. So they already had a background of like, kind of like how a camera works and how to edit. And the film studies was more just like honing your skills in film. Film production is all technical. And I think that's really good for new people because any new people who are like, I have all these creative ideas and I want to make films, but I have no idea how. The film production class is a great way to just learn because, like, Mr. Vosge and Mr. Burgess will just, they'll teach you like how to use a camera. Like what are the things that you need to do? How does the lighting work? How does audio work? How do you work those things? Editing. How does editing work? And how do you edit efficiently? Um, so that's really the big one. I'm not too knowledgeable about PCNN, but I know what Pete said earlier about like how like during homecoming when there's those like longer PCTV broadcasts, they're a lot more interesting than the ones that we have like for 5 minutes at the end of second period that no one really cares about because they can only cram in like two or three pieces, and they're mostly like minute long interview stunts, and like there's no real like there's nothing like really substantial there. Even for like the homecoming stuff, it's like even if there's not like a full length like film that's being broadcast, just having more content in the PCTV, I think would get more people to get involved because there's just more of an alert.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I think harmed the growth of PCTV and film studies before the advent of the film production class was the lack of prevalence, it seemed, and significance of PCTV in people's day-to-day lives as students at Pinecrest. Because like most people would just leave their class and go get food or something, in my experience, before like they wouldn't even watch, or they would stand in the hallway where it's muted and talk to people and use the 5 minutes on other things. And so like PCTV, if you weren't in that like the broadcast period, which I'm pretty sure was second period, there wasn't a lot of interest. And so I saw numbers and productivity like really, really low in those other periods because it was just kind of like the teacher would give us some kind of random assignment and then we'd do it. And they usually weren't always great. Like sometimes we had to make like one of the things was like, oh, because the media landscape is changing. So in this news production class, we're going to make Snapchat content. Like that's not like no. Like just no. Or we're gonna make vlogs. Like what? Like we got some funny stuff from people from that, but like it's not productive. And that's what we pretty much did. Like Snivy Kid is not productive. It was funny, but it was not productive. So then film production in its infancy, I felt like it had a lot of good people in it, but it was still very small because it was his first year and there wasn't a lot of interest in the school as a whole. So it was mostly mainstay kids who joined that, like Zoe Fermanian joined that, Spencer joined that, Brence joined that, Jimmy did it, I think. It was all people who were already super into this stuff.
Well, not all. I was gonna say, I was gonna add, in the first year of film studies, my freshman year, the main class was me. It was me and Jimmy, and there were like 3 or 4 other kids who I won't name call out, but if you know them at all, you know that they were just definitely not really interested in film or film at all, and they were mostly just doing it to like fulfill an art credit.
Yeah, you would definitely get the people who were not that into it and they just wanted to do it for the sake of having their elective.
Yeah, that was the other problem. It was just people who like weren't really passionate about it, just kind of doing it for like 1 year and then leaving.
And so then the next year after I did film production, the first year it existed, there were a lot more people in the next year's class, mostly from the word of mouth of the people from prior, I think. So like I know you joined it, Gabe, definitely from word of mouth. I know my girlfriend Issa joined it because I told her like this is awesome. You talk like you'll like this kind of thing, so you should join it, and she loved it. Like it was a lot of word of mouth spread, but that word of mouth spread could be, so they have growth now, but that growth could be much larger if PCTV specifically was allowed to have more variety of content and longer content and be more important to people's lives, because those kids work incredibly hard. Those are some of the most dedicated kids at the school, the PCTV kids, with how much they work late at night on the sports broadcasts. They work insanely hard submitting to all kinds of competitions, and STN is insanely challenging. Like you have 8 hours to do a full broadcast, and it's not really well designed for film, but for broadcast, that's what it is in the real world. That's how it works. And so it's an insane time crunch, but you're expected to produce quality. Like those kids are definitely some of the most talented kids that have ever gone through the school. But it could be more. The classes could be bigger. The program could have more resources if there was like a dedicated Friday period 10 slot or something every week or every other week, where they had like a proper 40-minute, 30-minute variety broadcast where they start with like announcements, then some like news pieces, maybe some fluff at the beginning, and then some like hard journalism at the end. And then at the end you have the film part. And I think it would help the film production kids especially care a lot more about what they were doing if we had that too, and they were actually making things to be aired. Because I remember in the film production class there was a lot of it's good enough. Like, oh, like Mr. Vogue would basically believe you that you understood what you were doing, and you would understand what you were doing, but you wouldn't make anything with it. But the class is more about teaching. But at the end of the day, like, it would be more effective if you were making more things that were meant to be consumed and to care about. Like, no one cared about continuity in the film production stuff. We'd spend a 45-minute class period shooting one shot, because that's how long it takes a lot of the time to get one shot. And then the next shot you'd have different clothes on, the next shot you'd have different clothes on. And I think people would care a lot more, and the classes would grow a lot more if we had that time for video content.
So I think that we've talked pretty thoroughly about the programs, but there is definitely something that has to be mentioned, as is evident by how much we've touched upon it. I think a lot of people bundle film and PCTV and broadcast and PCNN all together as one thing. It certainly seems like they have intertwined in a lot of ways. How would you say that relationship works? Would you say that there's a lot of overlap in skill set? Would you say that one maybe works as like a feeder system of talent to the other one? And how would you change that, I guess? Because it does seem like right now there's a bit of a definite structure to it.
It's like the PCTV kids often would feed into film because they wanted something more or because they wanted something different. And that happened in middle school too. The PCNN kids would feed into film. Film was almost like a side thing, it seemed. Because like film would always tag along. Film had its own trips, but that was later. So like All American High School Film Festival was its own thing, but only for film kids, really. But even then, broadcast kids tagged along. I mean, just the fact that they're the same teachers, the same people, they encourage people with different interests to try different things in the same field. Like Mr. Bode, Mr. Burgess, they're both involved with all the trips, like STN. They're both involved with all the classes. The classes are in the same place. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that they're intertwined. I actually think it's a good thing that could help both of them grow if they had more exposure to the general population of the school.
Yeah, I think PCTV really helps with getting people into it. Like, I think my first year in film production, I was one of the only people who had never really worked with Premiere or done anything like video editing wise besides like iMovie, which is nothing. And so I think everyone was pretty technically adept. And so it was more just harnessing that technical ability to use it with the film production pieces. And I feel like I can only think of maybe 2 or 3 people along with me that kind of were in the film program, like in the film production class / film studies, who were like had a sole film background versus a PCTV background, and like motivations that stemmed from that. That's that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like I don't know, like the skill sets, between film and PCTV are like, I think technically very similar, but creatively very different. You know, obviously it's like journalism is an entire beast of its own, and same with film. But a lot of like the tech, it's like whether you're doing journalism or film, you still need to know how to use a camera, and you still need to know how to use editing software, and you need to know how to like get good audio. So, it's easy for kids to jump between the two, because the technical skills are almost identical. It's just creatively is where the main differences are, and so that's also part of it. Like, I think anyone who wants to do film should like film specifically should definitely do both film production and film studies, just so they get both aspects. And with PCTV kids, they should along with PCTV, I don't know, like they take like capstone and stuff for journalism, right? Like the AP capstone class.
Capstone's pretty much separate. Like it's not it's not a lot of journalism. It's more just,
maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I took the capstone class last year. It's more like understanding the fundamental ideas of designing an argument for an essay.
Okay.
And like getting a point across.
Okay.
That's definitely valuable for journalism.
So it's still valuable, but the point is, so PCTV kids, they go further into journalism. So that's really like where the main difference is.
So I think that's mostly the programs and things that you guys have been involved in. There's competitions here and there. We've mentioned STN and All American, but what do you guys think has been really your motivator to do the things that you do? Like, was there a specific goal that you've always wanted to achieve? Was it more like there was a competition that you wanted to attend? Or has it really just been like suddenly you got an interest in doing a project and you just went out there and did it?
I just thought it was fun. there's not really any deeper meaning to it. I like tech. I liked making videos. I thought it was a valuable skill to have. And like if all else fails in my life, I can still go online and get video editing freelance work. Like if I drop out of college tomorrow, I would still be okay because of PCTV. So that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, I come from more of a creative background, and like every time I've worked with Pete, like people go to Pete as the guy to edit stuff. Like if he's on a project, it's like it's just almost de facto Pete's gonna edit it because it's just his prowess with it is the best. Um, and I kind of come from the creative side, and just I do it because I like to tell stories, and I wanted to be able to figure out the best way to do it in conveying stuff to an audience, because you mentioned I'm a magician too, and that's all about empathy slash perception of what other people are seeing. And with a film you can control that to the highest degree, and so you can take a whole day to get one scene slash even a shot to make sure it's perfect with lighting and everything, and everything's perfect. And I think that's so valuable just in everything. Like I've been able to work more with Premiere in making like my highlight video for basketball season and like a more funny version of a video for volleyball season, just because I'm able to manipulate different settings and different like functions that higher quality editing software like makes available, but you have to be able to use it, or else it just seems like a really complicated workspace with all these different panels. And I think film kind of helped me realize how to harness the technology to make the right things.
Sorry, I got sidetracked. So we were talking about. You just like remind me like what like the main question was.
Yeah. It was kind of like, did you sort of do you do the things that you do for like an end goal? Like, were you always more interested in the competitions, or were you always more interested in like something that got you motivated in this?
Right. I think in the end, I stuck with film for a lot of the same reasons I stuck with stuff like TSA video game design, and it's that it's an inherently fun thing to do, and I enjoy it a lot. And at the very least, you can use the skills for something else in the future. Like with video game design, if you learn programming, then there's a lot of stuff you can do with that. If you learn art, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with that. So, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing with film. If you learn how to edit for film, then you'll at least be proficient enough in editing to learn how to do it for, whatever video freelance work that you need, for if other people need to like make a montage or something. Like, at the very least, you'll know how to do that, or camera work, and you can run down the list and everything. So I think in the end, that's why I like stuck it out with film, and that it's inherently fun. It's like I'm not going to stick with it if I don't enjoy it, even if it has all the skills with it. It's just kind of it's fun, and as a bonus, you can learn stuff from it.
Yeah, and
So I
as
think.
things
Oh,
continued
sorry.
on for me, oh, no, you're good. As things continued on for me in film, like I also started to get motivated by college, and like the possibility that I could do something so fun as film as like an actual career. I was like, oh, that'd be incredible. So that really motivated me to go for it more, and really be kind of trying to my best at anything that was a task was put forward. And like for college applications for film schools, you had to make a supplemental film, and so obviously that was a motivation for me trying to make the best content possible.
I think it's really interesting, and both Brence and Spencer have kind of started to touch on the next thing that I wanted to ask, but I think you guys could still talk about it, because you guys have all done a lot of stuff as well that isn't necessarily film, and you have a lot of other interests and hobbies. So how much do you think that those have impacted how you do film things, or vice versa, how your film things have impacted how you do other things? And are there like any other things that you would want to try that you might not necessarily have thought of before you were involved in these film things? I mean, video game for one, I think video game design definitely falls into the category.
On the topic of like combining hobbies and stuff, like knowledge of how to manipulate video is insanely valuable for pretty much anything that you can do. It's one of the most valuable skills anyone can have in the modern age, because we're living in a time when anyone can just put a video on YouTube and the algorithm favors them and they become huge. So like in any field where someone is knowledgeable, like I think Brence could get huge on YouTube if he dedicated himself to like YouTube vlogging and magic demonstrations and stuff like that, just because I think he's an interesting and talented person who already knows how to do these things. And like I personally have made YouTube videos about random stuff that I didn't think anyone really cared about, that I just decided like I'd like to present this in video form for one reason or another. And then I made a video about the canonicity of an alternate like gameplay mode of one of my favorite games, whether or not it was like real or not. And I put it up. I thought no one would care. I was like, I'm gonna send this to like 3 people and whatever. And then the YouTube algorithm favored it, and now it has 30,000 views, which is small potatoes, but for like a channel with nothing, that's ridiculous. So like in this day and age, it's one of the most valuable things you can have as a secondary hobby or skill set to your primary interest.
Yeah, I mean, for hobby wise, I mean, magic. I mean, everything I do, and like Pete said, everything anyone does can be communicated through film. And often is the case, it needs to be communicated through film because words are not going to get it across, and you can't do it live for someone if they're across the world, or like now when we're all like separated. Film is the only way to do things, and telling a story through a video. And I think probably the best example in recent memory for me of that kind of coming into play is for our graduation, or not our graduation, but like our senior send off or whatever, like the last day of school. You guys saw I did like that magic trick video where with the cards and kind of a script that I had designed for our class. The whole reason that video was successful is there were multiple camera angles. You could see the cards, because the original video of just the camera from the computer is just me blurry, and you can kind of hear me talking. But the close up of the cards, you're able to see which cards are being put down, and in coordination with what I'm saying, it just makes more sense. But then the thing that ties it together is, or at least for me, what tied it together was the music that I found. The music that I found was able to climax at the perfect point where I was climaxing with what I was saying, so that in terms of emotion, it makes you feel like, whoa, there's actual meaning to this, which in turn, I think garnered a larger reaction from the people that I've showed it to.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an interesting segue from the music, because a lot of my experience between like video game design and film comes with like music and just like audio in general. And it's kind of it's almost like the opposite, where I've been doing a little bit of the audio for video game design in the past, in 8th and 9th grade. And in 10th grade, I kind of had like an internal thing where it was like I didn't really like know if I wanted to continue making music and doing audio for the game, because I still like didn't really know what I was doing. But Ryan Felberbaum was, I met him through the film class, because we were in the same class, and we became friends. And what I learned is, so he composes all the music for his films, all original. And so
He's won awards for that.
Yeah.
In many places.
And so he kind of taught me how to, how to use a lot of that, because it's like I don't know anything about music theory or anything like that, but he knows a lot about that kind of stuff. So he taught me a lot of the basics, and I was able to use that for a lot of the stuff that I did later for video game design. And a lot of the stuff that I had to learn, like audio for sound effects and like how to equalize audio and basically like edit out all the bad shit to make good sound effects for video games. It's the same stuff for capturing audio and film, booms and the big audio bag. You have to learn how to like adjust gain and stuff like that, so you're not picking up the entire world and all the air conditioning and stuff like that. So I think there was a lot of interchanging of skills in between those two hobbies, at least. I'm sure there's more, but I just can't remember off the top of my head.
So when it comes to your experience actually making the different projects that you've been involved in, was there a specific one that, for example, taught you something you had never imagined before and changed how you view these things? Or was there a specific skill that you were like, once you learned that, you felt like it opened up a whole new world? Because I feel like you guys have all done a lot of different things, and maybe come out in a different way than you thought you would have going in. You're all not necessarily going to keep doing film. Brence, I think, is the only one here that is. But I think that I wanted to know whether there was a specific thing like that changed how you guys did things. It could be something in your projects, or it could be something that you experienced.
The skill that changed everything for me was just the ability to edit video at a level that was somewhat competent. And once that happened, everything else fell into place. I basically edit the same way that I did in 7th grade, but I just know more things. But at the core, it's the same thing. And in 7th grade, I theoretically could probably have made any of the things that I have made on a technical level, because you can just Google whatever specific option you need, or ask a friend about, I've made this whole thing, but I want a specific graphic to move in this way. I don't know how to do it. You just Google that part. Like the nitty gritty is not nearly as important as the general skill. And so like once I learned that, that's when it all kind of came together, and everything else just built on that.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it earlier that being on sets with people who were more experienced than me, but at the same time had different thoughts about film than me, totally helped me realize the way that I would go about things. Because until the film production class, I had only really worked on like my little stop motion movies, and I submitted a stop motion movie to college because I think my favorite thing about those was that I was able to control literally every aspect about it. There were no actors, there's no cinematographer, so if something goes wrong, it's completely my fault. And if something is right, it's completely my fault. And so it's like that's an interesting transition, because I think you have to start to rely on people to do things, and you start to trust people with certain roles, like to do lighting and audio and all the other different things, because as you start to go on to larger projects, you start to need to dedicate your time to working on the actual content, not the production of the content / the technical aspects that people who probably have been doing it a longer time take for granted. That like that stuff, if it's not there, is your film goes down in quality by a lot.
I don't think I have like a specific skill off the top of my head that I like really like remember learning, but one thing that I did learn a lot from was a lot of stuff from STN, surprisingly, about really the two big things, one good, one bad. And the first thing is that I learned like the group dynamic, kind of when a big group of people need to go make a film, and like how you divvy up people to do certain things, and how like, like there's basically like quotas that you need to meet, or else, the end product, like basically everything kind of relies on the other. So it's like, the editor relies on the sound, and it's like, if the sound isn't there, then the final product is going to be bad. And it's the same thing with the script. It's like the script kind of relies on the audio as well in order to like make the scene meaningful, or just bearable to listen to. Same thing, and like that's just factoring audio. Like there's every single part is kind of intertwined, so everyone needs to be working efficiently. The other thing I realized from STN is that films are meant to be done very long form. I learned it more so, I learned it more so in practice from stuff like All American, even though I wasn't able to go, but I still, I was still, I was still influenced by it, and still, partook a little bit of it in like the pre-production stuff. But like the problem with STN's film is that you only have 8 hours to do it. And in the context of broadcast, that works great, because that's how real world broadcasts work. But real world films take years to make. So condensing it all into 8 hours makes you very prone to like a lot of like what ends up happening is you're forced into a lot of these like patterns and trends that are really only there to like pander specifically to STN, and that only work given the short time constraint that would normally just not be in films. The All American competition is better because that takes place, a lot of the prep for that is over the course of however many months, I forgot. But you actually have time to like flesh out something rather than spend, because in STN you still have that same group dynamic, which is important, but for script writing it's like you only have like an hour to write a script. It's not really going to be the greatest script because it wouldn't have gone through as much review as needed. But that's those are the two big ones I think off the top of my head, is how people work together and how like the film schedule should be.
You talk about the STN, our last year, our STN experience, like kind of being shoehorned into these weird kind of limitations that would never happen in reality. Like we had, like I was doing the sound stuff for our thing. Pete, you probably remember this, that like I was doing the sound, and once we had it on the flash drive, like we just didn't have time at the end of the day to link up the sound with the video. We just had to use the camera audio because there's just not enough time. Yeah, that was and then we ended up just like having to put music over the whole thing, and having it be synced because like there was just no way to link it up because of just the timing.
The same thing happened the year prior when Ryan Feldbaum was directing. He had me go out, he had me collect like the main audio bits, but after we got the main audio, he had me go around and get Foley and also just like ambient noise, so that like the actual audio could be, you have like the actual audio, and then like when people weren't talking, you still had stuff, and none of that made it in just because there was not enough time. And even a lot of the main audio didn't even get made in just because there simply just wasn't enough time for editing, and also Ryan got very angry. But yeah.
So this whole topic of conversation about working in a group and under time constraints actually makes me want to revise my previous answer to this question. Where working in a group and under time constraint is definitely probably the most valuable thing that I've learned from my experience in film and PCTV. Just because, like, I'm going into the field of video game development after this, And talking now with all you has made me think more about how similar the process of making a film and making a game really are. So like what Spencer was talking about with how everyone relies on each other, it's like, okay, the level designer can't make the level without the art assets, but the art asset creator doesn't know what to make without some reference from the level designer of what is needed, like that kind of thing. They all piggyback off each other. So it's like when you're making a game, it's like the tech guy, the programming guy who puts everything together that everyone else is making. That's like the editor, where it's like that's the most important part for the end product. But he can't do it alone because he needs all these other people to make him art, needs all these other people to make him sound. Otherwise, you just have a box jumping around in an empty void. So it's the same way of like the editor has nothing without the camera people, and the editor has nothing without the actors, and the editor has nothing without the set designer, and the editor has nothing without. And you can make some stuff like you can't make a film 100% as the editor alone. You could do some like experimental nonsense with like manipulating graphics and text, and like that's not film. At that point, you need like an animator, you need all kinds of stuff. So it's similar in that way. And so working in a group in that same way, where everyone has to rely on each other to make one end product, is definitely the most valuable thing.
You have some experience with this. It's just, it's newer, and I wanted to hear your take.
Yeah, I think I want to hear Gabe's take on a lot of this stuff.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, my experience has been a bit different from your guys's, I think. Obviously, I didn't join film production until this year as a senior, and it was done purposefully with no continuity, really. I don't plan on doing this in college. I've been editing for many, many years, just on my own little projects here and there. But I think Pete is definitely right in saying that there's a lot of overlap between what goes into making these films, and like the process is very similar to video game, because I have been making games for a long time. But the reason why I really joined, I think, is probably a bit different from your guys's. I didn't necessarily have a passion for it. It's more just like I had visited and tried a lot of the different tech opportunities on campus, and I had liked a lot of them and not liked some of the other ones, but I had never touched this area, PCTV and film, and I thought those were two very notorious ones that I had never touched. I thought I'd at least try them. And there was a lot in there that I learned that I hadn't considered before. But if I had to look back really and say like the closest thing to that I had done before that may have had some sort of passion linked there, it would have had to be running backstage for drama shows. Back in middle school, I ran those a decent amount, and I really liked the idea of like a spectacle, of having that unfolding in front of you, and you being able to take a part in that, something a bit bigger than just your piece. I thought was really, really cool. I haven't done as much of that in high school, but film I thought might have been an interesting gateway into a lot of that I had only done digitally before or in projects on my own. So did
you like film? Oh, sorry.
I did. No. That's a good point. I did like film production.
I couldn't hear him. What did he ask?
If I actually liked it, if I liked film. I have to say, I think film production taught me a lot, and I think it was a really cool atmosphere, and I got to talk with a lot of people that I don't think I would have interacted with as much otherwise. It's definitely a niche group of people, I think. But it didn't necessarily convince me to do it as like a main thing, or even necessarily, let's put it this way, if you want to do film, I feel like you've known that for a long time. If what you love is producing those films, producing whatever it is, documentaries, whatever, I feel like you know that, and you've been shooting things on your iPhone when you were in 7th grade, like Brence said, or your stop motions or whatever. I never really had that. I liked it a lot more because of the idea of building something like that with other people, and I liked working the tech behind it, and the creative vision in all that was always really cool to me. But I definitely have to agree with Pete where he says that being able to understand the concepts behind all that is one of the most useful like side knowledge that you can have, even if it's only tangentially or not at all related to what you actually do, because I can see it applied in so many ways. And I think the other thing that I would also have to credit film with is that for a long time I've been interested in doing something related to journalism, for example, but I have never ever touched anything close to it. Now that I've gotten a bit more of the behind the scenes of what it actually takes to build some of these projects that I might see in classic journalism, um, it hasn't dissuaded me nor persuaded me, but it has made it much more interesting to me. It's given me a lot more insight. Let's put it that way. Um, and I think that that was something that I was definitely missing before. So what I'd have to say regarding my overall experience in these film programs is that they're very interesting, but I think you have to come in with an open mind or knowing exactly what you want. Because if you come in knowing exactly this is what I'm going to be doing and I really want to learn like this skill and this is what I like and this is what I want to produce, then great. You're going to learn those skills and you're going to work with people that know the other skills and you're going to make connections and network and have opportunities to do a ton of cool stuff. One of my greatest disappointments of this year was that I was going to go shoot. I was going to help. I think it was Jimmy Hart's shooting some backstage or shooting something on set, and I think it might have been like a parking lot, or maybe that was Zoe's. Regardless, I was asked by people to help go shoot that. I think Brence was involved in that too, and because of some sort of scheduling conflict, I wasn't able to go. But I was set to do that, and I thought it was really exciting because I've worked backstage for a lot of different stuff, a lot of different things, completely unrelated to film, and I've seen behind the curtains and those things, but I've never really seen that in film, and I don't know that in the classroom really counts. Um, but the fact that it got me excited for that, I think, is huge, and I learned a lot. And regardless of how it impacts my life moving forward, I think it was definitely an experience worth having, especially for people that might not necessarily like. If you hate it, then don't do it. If you think you have zero interest in it, then don't do it. But if you think that you have even the slightest interest in it, or you think it's cool, or you think the skills could apply to you, I think it's very much worth your time. At least that's my experience in film.
Yeah, I think everyone should know how to produce video content to some degree, and the editing is definitely the biggest barrier because like literally everyone has a high quality camera in their pocket now, and you can get away. Like obviously you need a better camera to do quote real things, but you don't necessarily need to be doing quote real things to have it be worth it. Uh, like you just don't need high quality equipment anymore. It's all technical know-how, pretty much. So anyone can do it, and that's why I think anyone should do it. There's basically no barrier anymore.
Yeah, you don't have to buy a $25,000 Ronin.
Yeah.
I very
And
much
like
agree that it's beneficial to know. The only reason why I would say maybe don't do it if you know that you don't like it is because I think you can very easily get dissuaded from continuing, especially within our context of the classes at school, because they are like an elective, and a lot of the times you don't have to take it for any sort of credit. You're doing it because you choose to. If you're sitting there and you're learning about like exposure and a ton of buzzwords that you don't understand, and there's a quadrillion buttons on the camera, and like you feel like people
you
around you might know more than you, it can
you
be
don't
it can
need
be
that.
weird.
You don't need that is the thing. So like PCTV is a much easier way to get into that than film production because they don't go nearly as in depth into that.
Yeah, that's
PCTV
fair.
is like you learn from your peers most for the most part, and you learn from the teacher when you have specific questions of how do I do this. There's a lot less. There's a lot less specific things, and even like another thing about the thing I was talking about with video production that I just thought of is I think that as cursed as it is with like Musically and TikTok and those things, because Musically is gone, but it's TikTok now. I think that it's incredibly interesting with those things how people who have zero background in video or in editing at all figure out things like sequencing and invisible cuts just because of these like dumb little trends. It's like these girls who definitely have no knowledge of anything video wise, they figure out how to do invisible cuts and like change outfits, or like parkour guys like figure out how to sequence together a cool thing. They have no editing knowledge whatsoever. So I think that like getting a general knowledge of those things, I think it should be required by Pinecrest. I think that film in general needs a more general targeted class that is required to be taken.
I tend to agree. I just don't think it can be
Yeah.
nearly as in depth as Film Pro.
It
There's
can't
like
be as in depth. It shouldn't be as in depth, and it can't be as in depth. I just think basic video literacy should be something that every single person on the planet should have.
I agree.
Yeah, I 100% agree as well, Pete. And it's like, I mean, you mentioned the whole TikTok idea, and it's been around forever that people want to see stuff that other people think is funny. Like they're trying to make things based on relatability, and the way to communicate that is through video. And then it's also interesting to see TikTok is now normalizing vertical video rather than horizontal, which is minorly unfortunate in that sense. But
Majorly.
Yeah,
I feel
I like TikTok for normalizing sequencing and basic editing skills. I hate it for normalizing vertical video.
yeah, well, because that's the thing is like probably 50% of the population doesn't realize that if you turn your phone 90 degrees, you enhance the quality of your product by like 2 billion%.
That's why we need
Yeah.
that's why we need the required video literacy class.
Exactly. That like stuff like that would be not even taught, but just like said.
Yeah.
That like, yeah.
Or even the basics of like, I know exactly in my head how this should look, but I have zero idea about what thing I could use to make it. Like that kind of thing happens with kids all the time. And so then they just stop. Like all kinds of people have different amazing ideas, but they can't make them. And so like basic literacy in real editing software, not even real editing software, because you don't need real editing software. Even like mobile editing software should be required, I think.
Well, that reminds me of one of my buddies earlier this year. We had like an econ project where you had to make like a meme, and he just wanted to make a video like bigger or crop a video, and he had no idea. He sent it to me because he couldn't do it, and so he sent it to me, and then I had to do it for him, and then like via Google Drive send it back to him because like I couldn't explain it to him, and he just didn't know how to do such a simple manipulation, which is something that like everyone should be able to do. And it's not his fault because he just had never learned how.
Yeah, the most valuable thing is where do you start? Learning how to learn is more important than what you're learning.
And I think something that you've mentioned earlier, Pete, which definitely falls into this discussion as well, is that there needs to be tangible like goals and tangible successes that you can reach. Like if you're just like a lot of the times, I think it's like what you said with not having like a 40-minute show that you can contribute to, or without the project being real, with it just being like an assignment in class. I think it can be a lot harder to see your progress and to work really hard for those things, which I think makes it by definition a lot more selective to those people who are doing it outside of class or who are really interested in doing it full time or something. So if we can find a way to balance that, I think that would be huge.
Yeah, for sure. I think if there's one thing that, like, if this winds up being heard by any of the video teachers or God forbid, even like an administrator at Pinecrest, like, they take anything away from this video, it's that the video programs need more emphasis. They need more time to be viewed by the public eye, and they need more budget. Because they already have insane budget, but they don't have the other two yet. Film Pro is definitely growing, but especially now, after the whole coronavirus thing has sent everyone home, literally every single teacher is producing video content one way or the other, whether it be live or it be stuff that they actually put out. And some of it, like, sucked. And it was awful to watch. And it's like they just activated their screen recorder and talked for 30 minutes, and 5 minutes of it is valuable knowledge, right? Like what you actually needed to know. Like both the teachers and the students, especially in like, I don't want to be a cliche, but in these changing times, like it should be required
Yeah, I tend to agree.
for everyone.
I think I think that now that we've kind of told most of the film story, at least as seen by us, we can stop and take a bit of a look back and sort of elaborate a little bit on what Pete has said here. Like we've seen, well, mostly between the three of you, but I'll go ahead and say that between the four of us in this call, we've seen the film program through a lot of different angles. We've seen how it interacts with the other broadcast programs. We've seen the kind of people that come through here. We've seen the pros and cons. So if you had to look ahead to the future, and we've touched a decent amount on where we think that it should go, but what kind of change? First of all, what change would you make right now if you could? Pete has sort of mentioned it, but if you could restructure a class or something like that, or change something like the dates or length of PCTV, for example, if you could make one change right now, what would you do?
That's my change.
Yeah, I figured, but I wanted to see what everybody else had as well. And secondly, what do you think you've seen on your time coming through these programs that isn't talked about nearly as much as it should? Like people that are underrated, other programs that are underrated, ideas that are underrated, or just things that you think have a right to be mentioned that aren't as much.
I don't know. I think well, so for the first thing, I think film. I think film at Pinecrest uh, has a good future, at least short term, because I think ever since the film production class opened up, I think there's been more people going into film, like whether it be just like complete newbies like you, or people funneled through PCNN or PCTV, and then going into film production, and then later on to film studies and whatnot. And now there's more competitions other than STM. Like now you have All American, and I know like Miss A has a bunch more, like just like on her email list and stuff. Like there's a lot more just availability and stuff you can do with film now. So film is like I think back in like middle school, and like even like beginning of high school, like film was kind of like the afterthought of PCTV. But now more people are expressing interest. Like even the teachers like Mr. Vosge, Mr. Vosge and Mr. Burgess are dedicating more time to the film kids, which I think is good. Broadcast, in terms of broadcast, I think Pete's ideas are pretty good in getting more people involved in that, and I think that would also get more people involved in film too. That would just just bring more people interested.
It definitely would, because broadcast and film are inherently intertwined.
Yeah.
And the broadcast is the best way. Film and broadcast working together in that way is the best way to pad out time with entertaining content that the broadcast kids don't have to make. And it's the best way for the film kids to have a better experience because their content is getting viewed and getting feedback from everyone else.
Yeah. Like that's kind of how we got involved. I mean, at least Pete and I.
Yeah.
Pete saw the broadcasts when he was little and was like, oh, that's cool, I want to do that. And I saw the films in the broadcasts and I was like, oh, that's cool, I want to do that. But especially for like the youngins, it's really good. And even if even in high school, a lot of people don't like really know what they want to do yet. So if they still have that the films being played and just more time given to PCTV, it would at least show that like there's a greater emphasis of it, and that at the very least would get people more interested in.
For sure.
I don't know. As for the second thing, I need to like think more about it. I don't really. It's like things that are not very represented. I mean, I'd say almost like film in general.
Yeah,
But nowadays, it's like not. I think nowadays, especially this past year, film has gotten pretty well known and respected, at least by word of mouth.
Yeah.
You don't really like. No one at Pinecrest has seen any of the films really,
they
unless
just know it's
like
a fun class.
yeah, unless they've like gone to like the film showings or something, which most people don't do. Um, so, but I know at least by word of mouth, I know a lot of people know that it's a real thing. I just don't think people, no one's really seen it, which I think is a shame. You know, a lot of the films that have been made are pretty high quality, um, even by like student standards.
Yeah. On the topic of things that are underrated or like not talked about enough, I think animation, just in general,
Yeah.
and especially that there's zero overlap and like communication between the art programs and the film programs, but there could be some serious collaboration there because
Say
the
the
art
same
kids
thing.
are already learning basics of animation
Yep.
or even more beyond that, but they're not learning how to make it anything more than just like they're not really combining with the film kids to really make something, and they could make great things that way.
Right.
Or even without collaborating with the art programs, just within PCTV and film, I think a bigger emphasis should be placed on like motion graphics and special effects and like Adobe After Effects.
Mhm.
Like I wish that we had gone more into After
Mhm.
Effects in
After
our
Effects is huge.
yeah in
Jason-
our
Totally agree.
editing half of the film production class, rather than do Final Cut and Premiere and like have to learn the basics again on a different program. I kind of wish that we just did Premiere and then After Effects. And note how both of those tracks would have been teaching me things that I already knew, because I already knew a lot about Premiere going in. And obviously it was a very valuable experience because I learned a lot about Premiere because that was the first time I had any formal training. And so there were a lot of like very obvious things that I didn't know because I was self-taught. But like we learned Final Cut, and it was like learning how to do things with my left hand, because I never used Final Cut, but I'm trying to do things I already knew how to do in Premiere. And then we just learned Premiere, and it's like, okay, I learned tangentially more than before, but like I'd like to have more. So like rather than do like Final Cut and Premiere, they did like Premiere and then After Effects, or Final Cut and then Motion, I think is the equivalent on the Apple side.
Pete, you want me to give you my hot take?
What's your hot take?
Let me give you my hot take. You ready?
Yeah.
Here's the fix. Film production 1 class. Second semester, no more editing. No more editing. Maybe you cover editing like a little bit in first semester. Like you speed up first semester so that it's more editing, or more, so you can put some of editing in there, but you cover it way less, and you pick one NLE and you focus on it for like a couple weeks just so people can kind of understand it. Second semester, everybody's going to make a film. And I don't mean the kind of thing where like if you get one shot in 45 minutes and you can't get half your shots, but you can prove that you know what you're doing, then like it's fine. You actually have to make a film. And then exam week comes around, sometime when people are really stressed, 50% off the popcorn at the union. We set apart a period where everybody goes to like an assembly or whatever, and we show all the films, and people are allowed to bring popcorn or whatever. And it's a way to de-stress as opposed to a stupid, like, I don't know, what's it called? The zone that they make in the library?
It's like that no stress zone.
Yeah, as opposed to a no stress
Stress-free
zone, you get to show off the projects that people have been working on, so there's way more incentive to actually do them, and people can de-stress and actually watch these cool things. And then if you really want to do an editing class that's like proper editing, you make a Film Pro, like actually Film Pro 2 class, which is the equivalent of like a second year of it. And then you focus on not just properly doing all the NLE stuff, but you do After Effects, and you do more stuff with animation if you want. And you do stuff with color correction that can be a bit deeper. I don't know if you can do a full class out of that, but...
So Gabe, so here's the thing. The class, what you were saying about like having a semester dedicated to just making films, that class already exists, and it's the second film studies class.
Yeah, well,
I
no one knows
Oh.
that. There were only 3 people
The first-
in that class, and they didn't even get to make their films because
Really?
coronavirus canceled everything.
Yeah,
Well,
currently
yeah,
this year.
Jimmy
So,
was able to make a little bit of his. That was the one that
yeah,
you were going to work on, Gabe.
Yeah,
I
he did
worked on it with
Yeah.
him.
in 10th grade, I was in that class. It was me, Jimmy, and Brian Fogelbaum. There was literally 3 people in the class, and the problem is, we all made stuff. It's just the problem is you can't really make it a big thing because it's literally 3 people.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like a third
you
year
have to-
class. Like,
But
That's when you go and beg the film production kids who have no interest in your project.
yeah, that's what we had to
so
do.
that's what I
And-
experienced.
And back then it was even worse because film production didn't exist. So we had to go to like random PCTV people and be like, "Hey, please help us."
Right. I remember if the film studies 2 kids were coming and constantly begging in our class for film pro kids to do it, and I had no interest in it then, I can imagine how little interest the PCTV kids would have had.
Right. But
Yeah.
which is why I think the coming years will be better because what happens is when people want to first go into the film program, they first do film production and they learn camera stuff first semester, editing stuff second semester. Then the next year they take film studies 1 and they learn about like how to write a script and how to like actually make a movie. And even in film studies 1, it's like we still like did some film stuff, like we had to like go out and like shoot specific scenes. And then so you're still like getting refreshed on the technical knowledge. And then in film studies 2, it's all about just going out and making movies. And if there's a lot of people in it, then it will actually be enforced. The problem is when I took it in 10th grade, there was just 3 people, and the seasoned veteran Ryan Fogelbaum was, he was really talented, but he was also a lazy piece of crap, and he wouldn't do anything. And then Miss A would get really mad, and me and Jimmy would follow Ryan's example, and so we didn't do anything either. And Miss A would just constantly get mad at us every week for doing nothing. And yeah, it was bad. But if there's more people in the class, then like the chances of just nothing happening are a lot less.
Well, so on that topic, in film production, a problem I noticed when it came to people being lazy pieces of crap was that that class had a lot of people in it, and I'm sure all 3 of you can attest to this, that in the film production classes, a lot of times people would just kind of wait around because there were a lot of people. They would wait around for someone else to do what they have been told to do, or they'd wait around for someone else to take charge and do it. And so in my film production class, it was usually me or mostly Zoe, but sometimes me that would have to step up and like tell people to get their shit together and go actually like work and what to do. Like
Zoe would tell people to start doing stuff even if they already were doing it, just because it's
yeah.
Zoe. But yeah, it's the same.
Yeah.
Same thing.
So like a lot of people, I think it comes from a place of like not being confident in your knowledge that you already have, because people would know exactly what to do once you told them to do it. But then I'm sure that like in the classes where no one has that leader person to step up, nothing would happen. So like there would be a lot of like Zoe would do it a lot, and it was very valuable that we had someone to tell everyone what to do. But then some days either her leadership would be flawed and it wouldn't be effective, or she wouldn't be there or something, and I would take charge. But some days like both me and her would just be so tired of everyone's crap that we would just not like try and push everyone to do things, because we were just so mentally tired from doing it every other day. So some days just nothing would happen really, because there's no one like pushing for it. So I think if the teachers pushed a little more in that regard, like I think maybe in the earlier stages of these classes, the teachers maybe took on like a directorial role,
Yeah.
and everyone else was doing the smaller roles. that could be very valuable too in teaching people how to lead or how to be led,
I think
or
that's
necessarily what they're supposed to do.
I think that's why Miss A is actually good for that in a
Yeah.
larger group, because like when Miss A gets mad, like she gets very annoying, and like it gets to a point where you just like don't want to deal with her anymore. So you're like, all right, fine, I'll go out and I'll do it.
That never happened in film studies. In film
Yeah.
studies,
She
in
probably
film
got
studies,
she
sometimes
probably
she'd
got
get
less. Yeah, I don't know.
In film
in
studies,
the early days,
mad at the kids who, like the freshmen who were saying nothing. Like, we would, like, she'd ask the seniors questions, and me, Jason, Heaven, and Brence, we would all give like well thought out responses. And there was a sophomore who, he was awesome, but I forgot his name. His name eludes me right now because Benny, yes. Denny, yes. I love that kid.
Yeah, he's
But
awesome.
the two freshmen in that class, at the very end, at our discussions, that Miss A would be like, "All right, what did you guys think of the film?" And they'd be like, "It was good. I liked it. I thought it was funny." Like, you know. And there's always going to be those people in every class, and you can teach someone to fish, but you can't teach them.
Right. Yeah. I was more so talking about food production too, and
Yeah.
you know the problem with that class is like there was only 3 of us, so it was like she could only like get mad at us to a certain point before it like, you know, just like didn't matter because it was like barely a class. But,
High schoolers definitely need to be pushed in that way.
yeah, but so like if there's a group,
if it was taught by anyone other than Miss A, it would be a lot worse. Like,
yeah,
she's definitely
well,
vital.
So it's
to
like
film
if
studies.
there was a group, like let's say it was like the film production class, right, with Pete, and like how like if Zoe and Pete weren't there and there was no leader, if there was a solid group there, then Miss A would at the very least be able to like bicker them into submission or just yell at them until they did it.
That's one
which is
way
what
to
she normally
describe it.
does. She normally just yells at them until like they either get scared or until they're just like, fine, I'll do it.
She's
Especially-
a highly effective motivator.
Here's the one thing that I will mention, and I'll try to keep it brief because I feel like Brent's wants to add something. Is that I feel like it's a far more effective motivator if you give them an actual like yes, okay, Miss A could get me to do almost anything. She terrifies
Oh no,
me.
I'm saying this is like a last resort. Like this is
sure.
isn't the case of like everyone like has the script and has all the technical knowledge,
And they're just being
no
lazy.
one wants to do it.
Right. But the way that I
You
see
need
it, it's
someone
almost
with the
just
hammer
like
down.
if you're in those classes, like you've already dedicated a lot of time to this program. This is not Film Pro 1, obviously. I'm talking about the case of like film studies 2. So
Yeah.
I feel like people who have done that are a lot more likely to like already be passionate about what they're doing if there's an actual end to it. If you're going to show it to somebody, if you're going to be able to
You
put
would
it
think
somewhere
so.
or something.
Yeah,
I still think so. But there's nothing to do with it right now. Like you're doing it for the sake of doing it. That's kind of different.
That's what you would think. But I remember in the film study, because we shared a period, film studies and whatever the class for seniors was, where they were making a film, and like you can have passion for something and like it and want to do it, and still
and just not be motivated.
Be motivated.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's TSA in a nutshell, to be fair.
Yeah, like Miss A was definitely like, if Miss A wasn't there and none of those films, if Miss A wasn't there and coronavirus didn't happen, none of those films would have been made, because none of those films were made anyway because coronavirus. But if Miss A wasn't there, none of them would have been made because she was just such an effective like motivator. Like it's impossible to describe, but like.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, people would ask her to look at the first page of their script, and she'd be like, first you gotta finish the whole script, and then I'll look at it.
Yeah.
And people would finish it faster then.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say like, you know, like after like Miss A would like, you know, like yell at us to like go make the film. It's like, you know, at the end of the day, it's like we all love Miss A, just because, you know, like she just like, you know, gets things done and she cares. But from what Gabe was saying, like like Ryan Fogelbaum is a prime example because like, you know, he's the most talented student filmmaker I've ever seen, and he obviously has a lot of passion for film, but like he would never like wants to work on it like during class or anything like that. And he never like when he finished at the very beginning of the year in film studies too, he finished his Vietnam War film. And after that, Miss A was like, all right, make a new script. And he was just like, all right. And then he wouldn't do it. So eventually, like, Miss A had to resort to like threatening to fail him the class in order for him to actually write the script.
This sounds like me
it
working on
worked.
game projects.
In the end, it worked because eventually he did write a script. I never saw it. I never saw what he wrote, but he sent something to Miss A. So, you know, basically, regardless of how talented or passionate you are about something, there's still, you know, there's still potential for there to be like, you know, laziness or a lack of a motivation. So it's important that you have someone or something to give you the push.
Yeah, I definitely relate to the lack of motivation thing because like we've had all this time in the coronavirus, and first we had school, so I didn't, and tons of busy work, so I didn't have very much time. And then things started opening up a little bit more after that, so I had people to see and stuff to do. But like when I'm just alone, it's very hard to motivate myself to work on like a game project. Like I have this project that I'm working on my own 100%. It's very hard to be like, yeah, I'm just gonna do it, even though like this is like my life is video games, and like what I want to do is make video games. But it's still very hard to be like, all right, you lazy piece of crap, work on it now. Like, yeah. So the motivation from the teachers is invaluable for that.
Go back to the question you had asked before, Gabe, because I had wanted to add a few things. We kind of like got off on that tangent. It was good.
Absolutely. What question specifically? Because I feel like
it was the final question. It was the final 2-part question. I remember I had some thoughts to share.
Which things were underrated?
What thing would you change, and what things are underrated?
Oh yeah. Okay. Changing wise, I feel like Pete said a little bit with the artists, but like also I think at Pinecrest there's a large portion of gifted writers that have never even thought of working with the film people. And I feel like people have there's a lot of people who write stuff for I forget what it's called, like the Scribbler or the Paw Print, or whatever, the publication. And I think those people would be able to be at least of some use to helping people write stories and stuff.
Writing good scripts is hard.
Yeah, exactly. Writing a good script. Yeah, even yearbook, because those people are storytellers. They're telling stories of everyone in the grade.
I've written quite a number of scripts, and like almost all of them are garbage.
Cooperation with the English department would be very valuable because I have PTSD flashbacks of all of the times where we're doing some kind of project like STN or All-American or TSA, where there's a bunch of kids that are put on the team that have no idea what they're doing, and they're just the filler, like grip kids. And there's only so many people that you can tell you to go like buy props or get you coffee or something. Like there's only so many people that you can have to do that. So it's
Depends
always
on how
like
fast you drink the coffee.
There's always the leftover kids that those are the kids that are told to write.
That's true.
They always produce garbage that is never used.
Well, it's funny because it's like the leftover grip. It's like the leftover grips and like the director. So like the director.
You were like the least valuable person to be a grip. Like you're the person who knows the least about knowing nothing. So you are the person we're going to tell to write this. Like, it's just not nearly enough
Makes
emphasis
perfect sense.
Put on pre-production. That happened at TSA. That happened at STN. I've gone to STN. I would have gone to my 6th STN this year. I went to 5 of them. I went to
I would've
2
been
All
there.
Americans. I went to 2 All Americans. I went to 2 TSAs. On top of that, there had to have been more projects. Yeah, every STN had a practice day. So it's like I like probably 15 times I've done these like projects on a time constraint. Every single time, if it's film related, the kid who knows nothing is the one who's told to write. Why are you telling him to write?
Yeah.
When he
I think
knows
it's because
nothing.
like everyone,
And his
like
thing is
all the
not going to
people,
be used.
all the people who know how to like use a camera and like use audio are like too important to like have them like go for an hour writing, because they like already like have to be like setting up everything. It's just
More
time.
emphasis.
It's another reason why the STN having everything in such a big time crunch is so bad, is because immediately you need all of the technical people to be doing their thing, and all
Right,
of
you
the
need a
story
simple
people
story.
to be doing their thing. But there's like there's a little room for communication between the two.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely agree with Brent's.
Yeah.
Collaborate with the English department and the writers
Yeah,
and the
very
scribbler.
good idea.
Put more
Yeah.
emphasis on writing. And all this stuff that we're saying comes from more growth of the program, more student involvement. Because like when all the I'm sure that most of the people who are involved in the student films would be much better at writing than the last grip who knows nothing about nothing. But they can't, because you're already missing a camera guy. Like you need 3 camera people, you only have 2, but you need 3 cameras set up anyway.
Here's
Like,
the one thing I will mention though, Pete, and then I'll let Brence finish, is that you're talking about how it's like relative to growth, and I definitely think you're right, but this is a problem. Like this lack of like taking from other departments as like feeders for talent is a problem across every program I've seen at Pinecrest. TSA
Yeah.
is a perfect
Agreed.
example of that. TSA is growing ridiculously
Time.
fast. It has a ridiculously huge budget, and it's got its own rooms and everything now. And yet every team struggles with something, whether it be art or music or sound effects or whatever, when we have musicians and art departments at our school and people who do theater and even the entire film and PCTV department, which could enhance a lot of those projects. But there's no overlap in feeding from there. So growth is certainly part of it, but it has to be done tactically, I think, because the way that TSA did it was too fast with no oversight and no like plan. So you need to build those bridges.
Yeah, TSA is what happens when you dump money on something without a plan.
Yeah, it won the lottery, but he was a plumber.
Yeah.
It's I totally agree that there just needs to be so many more connections, because that's what makes Pinecrest so special, is there's so many different aspects and all these different kids who are very passionate or very good at one or two things, and none of them talk. Like
I don't know
they don't mesh.
Grade. I don't know half of our grade still. I knew every single person at Pinecrest Boca. I knew all their names 100%. All the people who came, all the people who left. Like at the end of 8th grade, I could, if you showed me a picture of someone, I could name them and I could tell you like 10 things about them. But there's still people on Facebook or Instagram. I'll be browsing and they'll friend request me or follow request me, and I'm like, who the heck is this person? And it says PC20. I'm like, what? This person
Pete,
went to my school?
Pete,
I've
I
never
don't know
seen
half
them
the
in my
people on this podcast. I don't know half the people on this podcast, and they're the ones leading their fields. Like, they're at the forefront of what they do.
It's ridiculous.
So the artist thing and everything is valuable. And me as an animator, I actually wanted in the last 2 months that we didn't really get of school, I wanted to work with some of the art people on some animation stuff, because I think they would be really interested in designing characters for like a stop motion flipbook style animated thing. That's another thing. But then also the second part of the question was what's an unspoken part or underrated part of film, right? That was, I think that something we haven't talked about much is just the culture of film and all the kids that are in it. Like all of us, there's like a certain not way of joking, but like way of talking and understanding that we all have, that like, and it's almost like a technical humor, and like we're all able to joke about different things, and it's like kind of a mesh with like meme culture too. And like I think we all like like by looking at film, you start to get to delve into the creation of media and the ideas behind how things are made and how people communicate. And because of that, you're able to break down human communication in ways where you can find humor in things that wouldn't normally be, like, wouldn't have previously been humorous. And because of that further level of empathy slash understanding of what people are trying to convey, you guys are, like, everyone who's in film is able, or who gets involved in film is able to connect more and also just have more fun with things. And through that fun, you're able to be more motivated to make a better quality product.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The culture of the film department was definitely very unique. PCTV and film were very intertwined, but their biggest difference was definitely culture.
Flying as an elf.
Yeah, exactly. It's like flying as a
Dude,
Even I know what that is.
If coronavirus didn't happen,
Mitch was coming.
Oh God,
It
dude,
was-
I
Mitch.
can't believe that.
No, that's not real.
Insane.
That wasn't real, by the way.
Really?
It wasn't real.
Apparently,
Mitch
some
was
people in
fake.
our class like faked a Mitch email to him, and that's what that all was. It wasn't actually Mitch at any point in time.
That's even
Apparently,
bigger
it was all
disappointment.
fake. It was all fake.
That's
I
actually
was-
really funny
yeah.
though.
Okay,
I'm
so for
heartbroken.
context for anyone who's listening,
Right, yeah, there's so much context here.
Is that Mitch was in our final cut.
Hendorf,
edit-
right?
I don't remember his last name,
I don't know.
but in our final cut editing class, we had stock footage of this guy and his helicopter business, and like we did this a year and a half ago, and I still know, like, flying is something I've had a passion for.
Ever since I was a little kid.
like we all know this, and it's like we know his thing by heart. If you play
Just from editing and playing all of his clips over and over and over.
yeah, we
again.
play his clips over and over again. And we when we got bored of making the actual news piece, we would like remix them. And one of our favorite remix, like, we make him say like funny things. One of our favorite like accidental discoveries was one day, if you press L on the keyboard and then you press J, like, it'll go backwards. So like if you press L, it'll play like it's going forwards, and you press J and it'll immediately go from where it was and just start playing backwards at normal speed. So at the beginning, when he says flying is something I've had a passion for ever since I was a little kid, or whatever he goes, you press L, and he says flying is, and then you press J, and him talking backwards sounds like he's saying an elf. And so you can make him say flying is an elf, and it sounded like that. So like that was one of the biggest.
You would have had to
jokes.
be there, guys.
Well, and then,
it's definitely like a you had to be
yeah.
there kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's
Well, and then
the Quattro
and then you
drive,
put in the Quattro.
The Quattro
drivetrain.
drivetrain. Oh, the V8 engine. Oh man.
I forgot
and
about
then so there was like so for context,
There was a
there was
car
like
one.
another like Audi one, right?
Yeah.
Or there was another
Yeah.
car one.
you to edit
and
the
then-
car commercial.
And then what we started to do is, like, there'd be this line that's like, and then you put in the Quattro drivetrain. And so then what we'd start to do is we'd combine Mitch and this Quattro drivetrain guy, and we'd be like, the Quattro drivetrain is a passion I've had since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Like, we just create these like abominations of
Well,
edits.
The best thing is, like, no one knew like what a Quattro drivetrain.
Yeah, no one
Yeah.
knows what a
Like,
quattro
what are you
drivetrain
talking about?
It's
Okay,
something that makes
I think the
car go
funniest
back.
thing is that we were all in different classes, right? And yet this has happened every year, and it's the same
Every
jokes that come up every
Every
year.
year we discover the same thing.
It's
Yeah.
so funny.
You guys
Oh.
discovered flying as an elf completely independently of us. And
No,
Mr.
did we?
I think so.
I thought it
Yeah.
came from you guys. We discovered everything else independently, but I don't know if flying as an
Mhm.
elf came from you or from us.
Mr.
Well,
Bird,
it
Mr.
came
Bode
from us
both were
originally.
telling us that
Right.
they were having flashbacks to our year.
We
Because
may
you
have
guys-
very well done it independently, let's be honest.
We were
Yeah.
independently discovering the same jokes that we had.
That's so funny.
That class was also the origin of Brink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, then that meme has affected me like ridiculously. Like, probably, I don't know, like maybe 20% of the grade, and then a bunch of freshmen and like sophomores and stuff call me Brink, because and so this whole thing started because we just are naming our files at the beginning of the year, and I'm typing Brence, and I forget to put the E on the end, and so I just say it once. I'm like, Brank.
No,
And
no,
literally everyone just started calling me that. And Mr. Burgess was like, hey, what's up, Brank? And then from then on, it was like, oh, well, that's going to be what it is for like the rest of eternity.
That's just your name now.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
Brence Platner.
chonk.
I wonder. You have to tell us. You cannot tell anyone at your college.
Loyola
about
Marymount. Yeah.
You cannot tell anyone, and you need to tell us if Brent is somehow discovered or resurfaces there.
That'd be wild.
Like you have a chance to escape, but also I feel like it's kind of inevitable.
It could happen. Yeah, it's like Thanos.
The return. Brink 2. Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, and then also I wanted to say a thought about like animation in general is that with animation, like literally anything is possible. And I feel like a lot of animated TV shows either don't neglect to realize that or just don't realize that. And like you can literally do anything with animation. It might be harder to draw, but I mean, you can literally I can't say it any other way. You can do anything you could possibly draw. And like the show, like Rick and Morty, for what it is, it does that really well at imagining literally anything that could happen. But I just think imagine like that's something that's a big draw of animation is anything can happen.
Yeah, animation's hugely important to like, especially media franchises that go on forever, because like. There would be no way that something like Star Wars: The Clone Wars would be possible live action. To have like the choreography of the battles and the huge scale of the fights and stuff like that, that could never be done for a kid's TV show, like consistently every week. And like even in like the movie, like if they need in the movies, if they need a young character from a young version of a character where the actor's like old now. Like they did that in The Irishman too, where
with De Niro.
De
yeah,
Niro changed age throughout the whole movie, and it was awesome. And like he looked like real. Like, I couldn't I didn't know that they did that at first, and I was wondering like, this makeup is insane. Like how'd they make him look so young? Like, no, it was animation.
It was CG.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, CGI is something that I wish we learned a little bit more because it's like. It's everywhere now.
I think that's beyond the scope.
Yeah, that'd be like film production too.
Yeah.
There were
like,
probably
film production
like a
ascended edition. Film production like 27.
Darn.
Because like the amount of work it takes to work on one 3D model like that and have it not fall into the uncanny valley. And then
what do you mean, Pete? You just put it into After Effects, you track the camera, and then you put some text on the wall. CGI.
Yeah. What's great is like I remember I think it was like Avengers, it was like Infinity War or Endgame, and we were staying for the credits and the after credit scene, and when the credits were going, it was like director, writers, it was a couple people, and then it got to like CGI animation, and it was literally like over 1,000 people.
Yeah, it's like tons of people doing it.
It's like.
Insane. I mean, when your main villain is CGI and he's basically the main character, like you kind of need to make him look good.
Yeah.
Basically, every character in that movie is like 50% CGI.
Yeah, exactly.
Either in the things that they do or in them themselves.
It's like so literally is the main character. Like
so much manpower in this like crazy expensive equipment, and like I don't know how they do it. It's so cool though. It's like I want to know how to do it, but it's like.
We've come all this way with CG and animation and all that. And you know what was the precursor to Thanos and young De Niro? The first full CGI character ever. You know who it was?
Was it like the Rock Mummy?
Nope. It was Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, that was the first full CG, right? Yeah.
Jar Jar Binks was the first full CG character in any.
Sure enough.
Of course. A real classic.
Oh, that's incredible. All right, we're getting a little long, so I am going to bring us around to the last question that I had. And this is how I like to end these because I think it's an important opportunity to have. Is there anybody that you want to give a shout out to? Either people that were
Oh.
really impactful to you as you came up through the program, and I think you've mentioned a lot of them, or people who you see as like rising up through the program now who you think are going to be important later, or anything in the middle.
All right, I want to shout out teachers. I'll leave shouting out students to everyone else, but I want to shout out some teachers. So Mr. Burgess, the GOAT, the man behind everything.
The OG.
Mr. Burgess's hands are in everything with any video thing, and he's just a legend. Dr. Svensson. I don't know if he still is doing any of the film or video stuff anymore, but like
I think he is now.
That man was so influential on both me and Spencer, like just in general, even outside of film, because we had him a lot for math class too.
Yeah.
For like wheel classes. So Dr. Svensson, Mr. Vogue, also the GOAT. Like that man is probably the most interesting person to talk to on the planet. He just knows so much about so many things. Like he's just
and the
so
stories
wise.
he'll tell, bro. Oh my god.
He's just so wise.
Mhm.
He's very well versed in like just pop culture and like film stuff.
And life.
Yeah, a real.
And I wanna shout out Miss Porter, who I think is leaving Pinecrest, but I wanna shout Miss Porter out for saving PCNN, because there was this teacher who I'm not going to name that became the like main teacher of PCNN, I think when I was in 8th grade, and she was just the worst, and no one liked her, and she wound up not finishing out the year, and Miss Porter came and made like the last half of 8th grade PCNN, which is the most important year of it for me. She just made it awesome. And then you have to give her a shout out too for dealing with me and Jason for 2 years in a period together. And freshman and sophomore, me and Jason, which is extra a feat. It's like Miss A had us both, but we were seniors. We were tame at that point.
Yeah, and Miss A.
Yeah, gotta shout out Miss A.
We did it a little bit earlier, but yeah, we are. She is the big film mama, and we are her babies.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh man, Miss A, Mr. Burgess, Mr. Vogue, they're all like beasts for PC film.
Yes.
There needs to be Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, of PC
Yes.
film. PC film and television production. Yeah.
I'll
I don't
throw a student name in there who wasn't necessarily like super impactful, but is just a really nice guy and doesn't put himself in the spotlight at all. Jonathan Kahn.
I was gonna say him too.
Jonathan Kahn is
beast.
a super nice guy, and he's really talented,
And he's a grinder too.
He's an absolute grinder.
Good fellow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great
Yeah.
guy.
Oh yeah, and he's already graduated, and we mentioned him a lot. But Ryan Fogelbaum,
Yeah.
just
I never talked to him. I never talked to him a ton, but the times that I did, I definitely learned new things. Like
he's
every time I talked to him, which was like 3 times, he changed my perspective on the world.
Yeah, he's such an interesting kid because like he's just so like passionate about his interests, and like he's so passionate to the point where it's like, his talent is just like unreal. Like literally in 8th grade, Mr. Svensson brought Ryan Fogelbaum over to the Boca campus to like show us like what he did. That was the first time I met him, and then I met him again in 10th grade, and then that's how we like became friends. And he was a huge influence to me, both in film stuff. Like at STN, he had the tradition of meme team, which was like a skit that he did where he'd basically just go around and like prank random people at STN. And he'd also have like random like think like Eric Andre, but like at STN.
And keep in mind, he would do this
That's not a
on
good
top
reference.
of his group competition, Crazy Eights, and his individual
Yeah, and
he would produce a third thing that was better than both of them.
Yeah,
That's
and
terrifying.
Just for himself.
and at his senior year, his last STN, he had me, do the camera work and like help him with like a lot of the skits, and it was a great honor. So, yeah, and between that and with the music and even just like a lot of like the memes, uh, definitely want to give a good shout out to him.
If we're shouting out students, we gotta shout out Jason. We gotta shout out Jake
Yeah.
Oletsky. We gotta shout out Heaven.
Heaven, yeah.
We gotta shout out
Zoe.
Zoe. We gotta shout out Jimmy.
Jimmy.
Yeah.
Who else we got?
There's
Jimbo.
a lot of big boys.
Connor Byrne. He was in
Connor
our film
Byrne.
production
Connor
class.
Goat.
Yeah.
Dennis.
Denny. AJ, Isaac.
Oh, I don't know if they're gonna continue film.
Right, yeah, they might have done it for arts, but I still like
thought it
them.
was-
They're funny
I thought
guys.
It was a good movie. I thought it was entertaining. This one didn't make me fall asleep in class.
All right. Well, if that's it, then I think we're getting around to rounding out the show. Do you guys have any closing thoughts, comments, any other shout outs?
Anyone want to play Rocket League?
I'll play Fortnite.
I'll do it.
Lord Almighty.
But
You
yeah,
want to play Rocket League with me and Spencer?
Absolutely, Pete. It would be an honor.
if
All right.
yeah, basically if anyone wants to try out film or broadcast, I would definitely give it a try. In middle school, I remember back at Boca, I don't know if it's still like this, but like you'd sign up like per semester or trimester. I forget how. I think it was trimester for some reason. You'd sign up per trimester, like what you wanted to do with your study hall period. And I literally just like tried PCNN for like one of those semester things, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I like it. So, if you're in middle school and you want to try it, that's a pretty easy way. And if you're in high school, if you want to try it out for an art credit, it's something good. And if you end up pursuing it, that's also great. Especially with film production now. Film production is an awesome class. The teachers are great. The skills are great. And overall, it's a pretty good time. So, yeah.
I think the program needs more recognition in general.
Yep.
Yeah.
From the school.
I
From
agree.
like there's no real big like awards at the end of the year like in fine arts. I'm pretty sure film.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There needs to be like we should get an assembly that's just like a big film reel.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That actually would be so
that
good.
would be a good use of time other than having some dude come lecture us that drug bad for the 5th time in a row.
Drug bad, Snapchat bad.
Remember, kids, it's public and permanent.
Oh man.
Their
So true.
Finstas.
Yeah. I'd also say that
Your Finstas are getting
if
you
any-
sent to prison.
if anyone feels creative or has an idea, to pursue that idea and act on your idea, because especially at Pinecrest, but anywhere, there's so many resources around you to make that idea more of a reality and to bring it to fruition. There's just so much stuff you can do, and also to ask your peers and your friends to help, because if they like your idea, they'll totally help you out with it. And even if they don't, they're still your friend. They'll help you out with it, and they want to see you succeed. And especially your teachers too. They're invaluable sources of information because they've been on the exact path you want to go on. And so you can ask them things, and they'll be able to give you insights into stuff that you wouldn't have thought of.
I think that's it then. Thank you guys for coming. I've had a great time, and hopefully people listening in have gotten a bit of an insight into the film world as a whole.
If you're an administrator listening in, let PCTV have a 40-minute period at the end of Friday every other week.
Yes.